trying to make sure that we're actually on live. I think that we're always on live sooner than I think we're on live. So then there's these awkward moments where everybody just gets to listen to what I'm saying right now. But anyway, I think we're live on Facebook. Welcome, everybody. This is your Symmetry Solutions team. There's 4 of us on here today. Usually on Fridays, we try to do a kind of lunchtime-esque little Q&A where we take some questions that we get from all of you during the week and pick one and address it between some of us. So that's what we're going to do today. And but we've been gone like most of July because, you know, life is crazy. We've had lots of things going on, but it is August now and we are back. And so make sure you tune in, make sure you send us questions you may want us to address either here on these threads and or through private messenger. Either way is fine. So today we were having our provider meeting and we had quite a fun discussion on questions that come up a lot for us about developmental phases is really what people are asking about, but they're not asking it in that way. They're asking it in the sense of like, so we're going through this faith transition and now my spouse wants to drink alcohol and I don't want that spouse to drink alcohol and now we're in a fight about it. And I think my spouse is acting like a teenager. And it doesn't just come up with alcohol, it comes up with all kinds of things where, and even some of us ourselves may feel like, am I acting like a teenager again? Why do I feel like a teenager? So Lisa, who's on here with us today, said, what's so bad about being like a teenager? so now we're off and running on a conversation. So let me just introduce everybody. I'm Natasha Helfer. I'm the owner of Symmetry Solutions, and my background is in marriage and family therapy and sex therapy, and I'm located in Salt Lake City. Jana, tell us a little bit about you.
So I'm Jana Spangler. I am an integral professional life coach, and I live here in Salt Lake City. And I don't know what you want me to say.
That's good. That's good enough.
Okay.
Jenny, tell us where you're at.
Hey, I'm Jenny Elledge, and I do not live in Salt Lake City. I'm actually in Orlando, Florida.
Awesome. And your background is?
Oh, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, just like Natasha.
All right. Thank you. Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Butterworth. I am in Boise, Idaho, and I am a licensed mental health counselor.
Perfect. All right. So I think I'm probably going to put you on the spot, Jana. You're going to love this, but you're the one that brought it up. So what are you noticing as far as some of the conversations that a lot of people kind of, let's say 35 to 50 are having in their relationships, as especially they're going either through a faith transition or even just midlife type of stuff? Like you don't necessarily have to go through a faith transition to kind of be questioning aspects of your life. So what do you notice?
Did you say Jana or Jenny?
That's Jana.
Okay, that's me. Well, I think what I was bringing up was specifically in mixed faith marriage. So I don't know. I mean, generally there's a lot that goes into this, but 2 of the things that I noticed are really hot topics in mixed faith marriage during this kind of time are, one of them is parenting. Parenting is always a big question for people when we've always been on the same page with how we are teaching our children. And now we have 2 different ideas about what we were teaching. This is a big one that throws a lot of people, understandably. And then the other big one that I hear you mention is about alcohol and word of wisdom. And really, it encompasses a lot of the outward signs that we've gone through a faith transition. Like we seem to be a little more understanding of someone having new ideas or thinking new thoughts, but it really hits on a visceral emotional level when someone wants to change the way they observe word of wisdom or tithing or garments or some of these other issues. So those were the 2 that I brought up.
And so as we were talking about that, Lisa, what came up for you?
Well, one of the things I can't remember exactly how Jana said it, and I know she didn't mean it in a rude way, but she said something about, you know, like how this rebellion is immature or something like that. or it can be, right? Like it can be immature. And like I really identify pretty strongly with being a bit of a rebel, right? Because I've always sort of had this deep sense of don't tell me what to do, which, you know, in a religious context, a specifically Mormon religious context, there's not a lot of space for people who think like that, right? Like we have a lot of space for people who love the rules or follow the rules because they like making people happy, but people who are just like, don't tell me what to do, we're sort of labeled as like the problem people. And it's taken me a long time to sort of embrace the fact that there are a lot of positive things about having this as a personality, that there's a lot of ways in which sort of pushing back against expectations can like lead our institutions and our families in really good directions, right? But then there's also the element of where if you're just a rebel without a cause and you're pushing back against things that don't need to necessarily be pushed back against, that really can be immature. And it can even lead to behaviors that aren't even what you want. Like Jana gave an example. Jana, you should talk about that room cleaning example, because that's perfect, because I've been there too.
Yeah, this is one I've shared with clients. And what I want to say about this is that it's actually a normal thing if we're talking spiritual development, right? Which is one of my areas of expertise. It is normal when you are going through a faith transition to need to deconstruct. And so I really don't believe that all of this rebellion is immature. It can be felt that way by a believing spouse. It's often interpreted that way. But when people start going through a deconstruction, they are starting to notice all of the things that no longer serve them, or they no longer believe in. And they can start to, there can be a tendency, and this is different for different people. Everyone does this differently, but there is a certain personality type that it can start being just kicking against everything I've ever learned about. And so the example that I gave was a moment I had as a teenager when I tended to be very messy. I had a very messy room all the time, and it kind of drove me crazy. I didn't love it. I just didn't do anything about it. It wasn't a high enough priority to me. And I had a very controlling mother, felt very controlling to me, and I had a very rebellious attitude toward her. So I was heading down the stairs one day to go clean my room. And my mom, as I'm going down the stairs, says, "You better get that room clean." And so, of course, I did not, because I wasn't about to do it when she told me to do it. And it took me years before I looked back and realized that she was still controlling me. She had talked me out of doing something I genuinely internally wanted to do, which
Right.
still ticked me off. It kind of ticked me off when I realized that. Because again, I'm rebellious. I don't want to be controlled. And so that tends to be something that people face as they go through a faith transition. Because, and this is just normal development taking place, there seems to be something that makes us want to really reject where we've just come from. And so I see that tendency in a lot of people, and I just encourage people to start to look internally. If you are totally going along with a program or completely rebelling against a program, you may not be using your own internal compass. So maybe we should look at that.
Yeah, and I think it's really more about like learning to hear your internal compass than it is, you know, like, again, I think this is the reaction that I had, the feeling of reactivity that I had was about feeling like my way of being was somehow like inferior or immature, which I don't think Jana was actually saying, but I have like a sensitivity to that because I do think that was the message I got a lot growing up, that, you know, like, in order to be mature, I needed to get in line with the program and do the things that I was supposed to do, right? And that, and I often did anyway, because, you know, I want to make people happy too, but it just I always felt like there was something wrong with me, that I always felt so rebellious. Yeah, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with sort of being very protective of your autonomy. And in Mormonism, there's actually a lot of lip service we give to agency, right? But then actually like having the tire hit the road on what it looks like to allow people their agency, we struggle with that.
Well, and Jenny, you had some good points about kind of the difference between an identity, which I think is more what Lisa's talking about, versus kind of reactionary approaches to, responding to stimuli that comes in, right? So do you want to talk a little bit about kind of your thoughts about reactionary responses?
Sure. I wanted to mention that I think we as adults understand that teenagers are expected to be rebellious, right? We know developmentally they're meant to do that. I don't see the yellow square around me, but I guess I'll just keep on going.
Yes,
But
trust the process, Jenny.
trust,
You're on.
I will trust the process. But yeah, do we have that space, for adult to necessarily to be start to turn on maybe more of the critical thinking? That's what I'm hearing a lot of. If I could offer maybe a positive reframe, that this is more maybe critical thinking of, this cultural teachings that I've had, do I want to go along with that, or do I want to start turning on my more inner authority? So I was mentioning earlier in our provider meeting that, we want to be careful or maybe judge, and this is the tricky part, to know if we are reacting to something, or are we kind of proactively, what did I say? It was so profound earlier. We want to make sure we're not reacting in a negative space, but we're being more proactive with intention. That's what I said. We want to react with intention. What is our intention in the moment here too?
Yeah, and I think I really resonated with that with everybody. I mean, these are all good points, and of course, I'm the queen of the yes and, right? So I love how these are all things we have to sit with and contemplate. It's not as easy as I'm acting like a teenager or I'm not, or it's not as easy as I'm just being reactive to my past, or I'm being proactive about my future. It's like all these things are very interwoven. And I do think that there is something beautiful about the developmental stages, and looking at our life through the lens of development, that at every juncture, at every turn, there's new stuff that our systems are kind of inclined to move towards, because that's what humans do, right? We have to continue to grow through life. And so I think sometimes we think, going, and I brought up that Erickson, who came up with kind of the developmental model, did say that if certain developmental phases were stunted, you're probably going to have to go back and do some work at that developmental stage. And so for those of us who've come from either family systems or religious systems where there wasn't a lot of room for autonomy, maybe more enmeshed systems, we may not have had the opportunity to self-autonomate as much, right? And to have that sense of kind of that inner compass. And for somebody like Lisa, who, her personality is beautiful and is a little more autonomous in general, but then being stuck in that kind of a construct, in her growing up years, I'm guessing, Lisa, that you're struggling with a little bit of both, knowing when you're reactive versus autonomous, and actually your beautiful self coming through, meaning I get to self-advocate, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with my self-advocacy for myself. And then, of course, we're all women right now on this panel, and that adds another layer, which society in general has taught us to be pleasers and caretakers of others. So it's another layer of being difficult to know when you're self-advocating, and the world makes you feel like a rebel when you say you're a female piece, like I don't agree, or I don't want to, or this is not how it's going to go for me. So there's, we see that a lot in the workplace research, where, female bosses are kind of called bitches or aggressive, when their male counterparts are really acting in very similar ways. So do you see the complexity, right? And so I'm like, bring on the teenage developmental phase that I need to go back and revisit. Bring on my midlife phase, right, that I'm currently visiting, and everything in between. So anyway, final thoughts from everybody. I'll just let you all have final thoughts. So Jana, why don't you start first?
Okay, yeah, my final thoughts were, if I'm coming across like this as a terrible thing, I really don't believe it is. Because, and what I really encourage people to do is to bring awareness to whatever you're experiencing. I don't think that we're ever whatever we're experiencing, we came by honestly, whatever it is. And we need to bring a ton of self-compassion and just awareness to what it is. Because all of those feelings, whether they're rebellion or reaction or whatever, any of those feelings are, it is our inner wisdom trying to get out. There is something really wise in that rebellion. Like either we have really given up on our autonomy and it's something we really need to strengthen. And so we're feeling very reactionary. It's for a very good reason. So I would just encourage people to accept what is coming, pay attention to it, and see what inner wisdom your life, your experience, your rebellion, your uncomfortable emotions, whatever it is, see what it's trying to teach you, because I think there's something really wise at the core of it.
I love it. Jenny, your final thoughts.
Natasha, you mentioned that we were all women, and that made me think of something. So I'm thinking that we should maybe look kind of systemically at a whole family tree, and maybe look back in our generation, what modeling did we have growing up? Did we have like female parents or aunts or older sister teaching us how to self-advocate for ourselves? Did we have that? Maybe that's something that we're now leaning into an adulthood, but we're like, I got to figure this out. And I didn't have great modeling around that. And so sometimes that might look really bumpy. Or maybe you did have a really good positive experience with that and you're able to pass that on to the generation. But maybe just kind of get this kind of broader systemic view of what that was like for you.
I'm like, boom, bring the intergenerational development too. that even widens the lens even more. I love that you brought that up. All right, Lisa, bring us home, Rebel.
Well, you know, like one of the things I was thinking about, because I feel like, well, first of all, Jana never really sounded terrible. Like she doesn't need to apologize for anything. She sounded fine. Like, and that's one of the things that, like, noticing my reactivity, right? Like I have these feelings come up because I'm so used to, because I, as a child, got so used to feeling like my rebellious nature was a problem that, like, I can feel that way now, even if nobody's implying that. Right. And so that's one of the things that I have to notice, is that, like, these things sometimes rise up out of an old wound and nobody in front of me is actually implying that. And yet I still want to push back on it. Right. And one place where I noticed this particularly, and this was coming up for me as you guys were sort of talking about this, is like, you know, I read a lot of books about like attachment theory, and they'll talk about how it's so good to talk to your partner about what you're doing throughout the day and like connect. And I notice that when my husband asks me, so what are you doing today? Like my autonomy starts to feel threatened. Like, and I'll be like, I'll do whatever the heck I want to do. Right. And he's really just asking from a place of like curiosity and wanting to connect to me. And like, I'm experiencing it as like a threat to my autonomy. And that, you know, like Jana said, like, there's nothing that I need to like judge myself for in that. I just need to like see that like my autonomy still feels threatened. It's sort of like I'm playing defense and the offense isn't on the field, right? And so that's something that I just have to like keep learning and seeing about myself.
All right. So whether you realize it or not, you have listened to a lot of wisdom. Like I wish, I mean, these symmetry solution strategies are meant to be about 15 to 20 minutes long, but this could have easily turned into a 3-hour discussion, because I would have loved to dig deeper into a lot of the wise words that all three of these panelists have shared. So feel free to re-listen to it, because I think there's a lot there to think about: autonomy, about relationships, about the difference between reactivity and self-advocacy, and how they're oftentimes intertwined. We are the Symmetry Solutions team. We would love to help you with a lot of different services. We offer wellness coaching, we offer therapy services, we offer consultations. We do quite a bit of speaking and things like that, if you're interested in anything like that. So check us out at symmetrysols.com, SOLS.com. I'll make sure and link that. And even if you just need referrals, if we're not the best fit for you, we'll hopefully try to, you know, at least gear you in the right direction. So for many people who are going through kind of life transitions, faith transitions, relational struggles, these concepts can be really, really helpful. So hope you have a great weekend ahead, and everybody take care. Have a good day.